Going live. We're live. Hello, welcome, Dulcimoon friends. It's so great to see you. I'm Erin Mae, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Joellen Lapidus from all the way from California, where it's very hot right now.
And just to make a small correction, it's Lapidus.
Lapidus. I'm sorry. Thank you for
It's all right.
teaching us.
Yeah. There's a
Um,
company in France, Lapidus, very high-end fashion. They Lapidus, but we're Lapidus.
Lapidus. Excellent. Okay, so Joellen has been involved with the dulcimer community for a very long time, from some of the early West Coast dulcimer scene, and all the way through to producing albums and books and building dulcimers right now today. So I'm very excited for us to kind of talk about your dulcimer journey. So why don't you just start at the beginning? How did you discover dulcimers? How did you get started with all this?
Okay, so I was a junior in high school in 19, I always have to go over this, 1961. Okay. And the folk thing was happening. And I grew up in New York City. So,
Wow. Uh-huh.
and before the folk revival was the beatniks. So we would take the subway into Manhattan, into the Greenwich Village, and we would go beatnik hunting. But that was very exciting for us. People were very not mainstream.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so that was pretty exciting. But anyway, that evolved into the folk music, the folk movement, the folk revival, which
Yeah.
Gene Ritchie was a part of. But I didn't
Right.
really get to Gene Ritchie until much later. What happened was I had a friend who was a year ahead of me, and she went away to college. And she came home with two dulcimers that she had built. So this is 1961. And two things happened to me. I love to tell this story. One, I realized people actually built musical instruments. They didn't
Uh-huh.
just appear. Somebody
Yeah.
actually built them. And the second thing was that a woman in 1961 had built a musical instrument.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning for me of my dulcimer journey. The
Yeah.
next thing that happens is in 1965, I hitchhike with this guy who I was kind of singing with to the Newport Folk Festival.
Ah.
And he knew all the ropes, and he got us in for free, how trespasses. Oh, okay. And I was at the Richard Farina and Remy Farina concert where it
Ah.
rained, and 1965, and he died the next year.
Wow.
So that concert, even though it was in the rain, that sound uh, just got me. I mean, it just like went to my core, and there was
Mm-hmm.
something about that. Because my friend didn't really play the dulcimer; she just made two of them, and
Yeah.
so I didn't really know what it sounded like or anything. So Richard Farina was what I heard um, that turned me around, and then I did a little research, and I found that he had written the Swallow Song in Big Sur, California, and I ended up traveling to Big Sur in 1966. Yeah. And actually, I drove through there on 65, but I didn't see anything because in Big Sur, all the houses, they're required to be off the road, so you can't see them.
Okay.
I didn't know it. But anyway, the following year, a friend of mine was working at Esalen Institute, which is this kind of resort on the Big Sur coast. And all the pioneering psychologies of the 60s were doing seminars there and everything. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
so when I came to California, make a very long story short, I ended up being there. And in college, I had a professor who made guitars, so we made some tentative plans to build a dulcimer, and I always had it in my mind. So for any of you would-be instrument makers, this is how I did it. I bought one tool a week with my salary. And
Wow.
in 66, there weren't a lot of women woodworkers. And luckily for
Yeah.
me, the people in Monterey and Carmel Valley and Carmel, they thought it was kind of cute that this girl, I was 20, was trying to make instruments. And so they helped me and gave me all this expertise and encouraged me. And in fact, I didn't know how to bend wood. So I would buy a 2-inch piece of wood and I would cut it the shape out with a jigsaw.
Uh-huh.
The Columbine dulcimer, which is the first dulcimer I sold to Joni Mitchell, was made that way. It's out of a solid piece of wood.
Wow.
Eventually, I learned how to bend wood, so that changed everything.
Yeah.
But I built my first dulcimer was a little coffin-shaped dulcimer, very simple plywood, and actually a very famous person, not to the dulcimer community, Virginia Satir, who's very famous in the therapy community, bought it for me for $25, and someone said, "Oh, that looks neat, and build me one." So anyway, it just went on like that, and
Yeah.
so then everything changed. So I was in Big Sur for 2 years, and during that time, so Big Sur was also a hotbed of artists.
Yeah.
A lot of the beatniks from San Francisco had moved down there, and a lot of them, even outlaws, and lived in the hills. And it was a very rural mountain community, but mountainous, but right on the ocean. And it was gorgeous. I mean, stunning. And that inspired me. And I never even knew I had artistic talent, but I started carving. And because the environment just made you want to carve and, do stuff like that. And I started doing these free-form pegheads. I would just start carving, and they all came out looking like birds, with their wings spread. And sometimes I'd carve too much, and I'd have to really improvise where to fit the pegs in. I was just, and then I found this book, classical guitar making. God, I can't remember the guy's name. It was the classic. There were no schools then of luthier. And so a lot of people in Big Sur made their own drums. So there's a lot of instrument making going on, but not stringed instruments. But anyway, this friend of mine who made drums turned me on to this flamenco guitar player and maker, Freddie Mejia, who lived in Carmel Valley. And I had studied anthropology in college, and this notion that if you go to a village and stay, you bring food and gifts. So I have this Volkswagen, 66 Volkswagen bus, and I would buy a chicken and vegetables and flowers, and I would drive out there and Freddie was part of they lived on this ranch. They were part of the flamenco troupe that used to play at the West Coast Renaissance fairs. And so he became my first really instrument teacher. And I like to tell this story because it totally, framed, that's the only word, it totally framed the rest of my instrument making to this day.
Yeah.
They had a barn, and he had this guitar, and he said, "I want you to hold the guitar and stand at one end of the barn, and I'm going to stand at the other end." And he just said, "Hello, Joellen," and the guitar vibrated from the end of the barn. And he said, "That's what you do. You make the instrument alive. You have to make it alive." And that was the big lesson. It's not just a matter of building a box. It has to vibrate and be alive. So in the beginning, I hand planed all my wood. I was kind of a purist, everything by hand. Later, I bought power tools. And actually, last year during the pandemic, I actually bought a drum sander, which flattens the wood for you. So I'm getting old, you know. I'm planning. But so Freddie was a huge influence. And what happened was in '67, we were going to have the Big Sur Folk Festival. And I don't know why, but I just told all my friends I was going to make a dulcimer called the Festival Model, and I was going to sell it to either Joni Mitchell or the Incredible String Band. And they all laughed. But it happened. Anyway, so I went looking in the woods and I found these beautiful columbine flowers, and that became the sound hole. And I made this instrument called the Wild Columbine. And to make, again, a very long story short, she bought it. But her encouragement, you wanted me to talk about people who influenced me, you know, so we got
Yeah.
Richard Farina. Well, we've got
Yeah.
Sue Kaust, my high school friend, Richard Farina, and then Joni, because Joni's appreciation of that instrument and of my music just made me take myself seriously as an artist. I mean, I consider her
Uh-huh.
mentor, or really what I learned from her was invaluable. And that really set me on a path, the artistic path, you know. So I moved to Northern California and studied Indian music at the Ali Akbar College of Indian Music, which also was very formative because I got there late and the only instrument they had left was tablas. Now, I never thought of playing drums my whole life, never. But anyway, the tablas were too hard. You had to practice like 5 or 6 hours a day. So I switched over to the Arabic drum. But, you know, I'm known as a rhythmic player, and my
Yeah.
rhythm comes from studying all that Indian music and Arabic music. And also the fact that in Indian music, the drummer is an equal soloist to the string player. It's
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah.
oh, the drummer just keeps the beat. The drummer really, if you've never listened to Indian music, listen, go and
I got to spend about 10 days in India one time, and we were with this group of people who were all non-musical, and I was the only musician
oh my
in the
God.
group. And it was so interesting to me because we were mostly going to these like very rural village churches, and they would have a piano or a guitar and then a rhythm instrument of some sort. And everyone who had no musical background whatsoever was like clapping along like it was in 4/4 time, you know? And I'm listening to the rhythms from the drums and going, I can't find a steady beat on 1, 2, 3, 4 to save my life in this. I was just so mesmerized by all of the rhythms
Yeah.
of the drumming. So I can definitely see how that has shaped your playing and the
Yeah.
kinds of rhythms that you incorporate.
The other thing is when they teach rhythm, they have you speak the rhythm first. And anyone
I've
who's
been
taken,
so interested in that. Tell us more.
well, anyone who's taken a rhythm class from me knows that we speak every rhythm before we play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if you're just going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, in Indian music, they use syllables. So it might be
Uh,
da, dig, dig, da, dig, dig, but that corresponds to sounds on the drum. So with the
uh,
dulcimer, it doesn't apply. Arabic music isn't exactly, the rhythms are equally complex, but
mhm.
they don't speak it in that same way. Um, it's more like dum, tick, tick, dum, tick. You know, but anyway, I'm not going to go there. So another huge influence on my playing.
Yeah.
Um, so that was Northern California. And then I came to Southern California because um, not only had I sold Joni an instrument, but a lot of her friends who were very David Crosby, Jackson Browne, they all bought instruments from me.
That's
And
amazing.
so I thought it'd be better professionally for me down here in LA.
Mhm.
But I came down here to LA and I kind of emotionally fell apart for a number of years and I disappeared. In fact, a friend of mine and I went to a Dulcimer festival down here. I wish I could remember what year it was, but everybody thought I was dead.
Oh my.
I walked in, I go, "You're alive, you're alive." But I
Oh.
just had pulled out of the whole scene. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
sure.
anyway, got myself back together, and I didn't really start playing music again until 2000, or building. I actually
Hmm.
rented my shop out And but it came back with a vengeance, and I've been building ever since. And so what happened was in 1976, I decided to do a book, and it was the first dulcimer book that came out that had the traditional as well as the contemporary, the West Coast, which I find out is not really so West Coast. I mean, a lot of, like, I spent a bit of time in Arkansas at the McSpadden
Yeah.
town, and they have a huge Appalachian cultural center, and I
Right.
participated in some stuff there. And I'm telling you, the people in Mountain View are just as innovative and even beyond the West Coasters. There's some amazing dulcimer players there. And
Yeah, you know, that group was really influenced by David Schnoffer, who ended up in Nashville and did a lot of the Midwestern circuit.
oh,
But
I bet.
he also was really influenced by that West Coast
Mhm.
thing that was happening. The first time I ever met Robert Force, we were playing a lot of the same things, but we had gotten them from completely different places. And it was
Exactly.
one of those really interesting, like trying to trace back how did we get to where we got, because we didn't, I hadn't encountered his playing or almost any of the West Coast dulcimer scene. And but like you're saying, there's a lot of the similar kinds of innovations and things, but we just got there in kind of different circuitous routes, I think.
Well, I think another thing that influenced the West Coasters, including myself, is that we're all urban. Most of us were urban born.
Mm.
Like I grew up in New
Mm-hmm.
York City, and we had music in the schools. My first instrument was the accordion, and we played classical music. We had accordion orchestra, and then in junior high,
Wow.
they wouldn't let me join the orchestra with the accordion. They said it was a bastard instrument. That was my first experience of musical bigotry. But but so I
Uh-huh.
took a clarinet, which is not a bad thing because later I ended up playing klezmer. Um, but the thing is, we all grew up uh, in urban environments where we, especially if it was in school, band music, marching band music, classical
Mhm.
music. I went to a couple of music camps where we played, 140-piece orchestra. I mean, there's nothing like, it's not the same as sitting on your porch playing the dulcimer, playing with
Yeah.
140 musicians, some great piece of music. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we didn't grow up with that tradition of those folk tunes. So our music came out differently because what we had heard,
Right.
thing we were
Yeah.
exposed to. I mean, I just wanted to get that in. I think that's one of the reasons for the differences. But like you said, we also ended up in some of the same places. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
and I actually met Gene Ritchie through a very odd. So I was living in Northern California and I rented a shop from this woman. It was like maybe 10 by 10, and it had 3 glass walls. It was a very interesting little room. I think it was meant to be a studio behind their house. And she ended up being Gene Ritchie's niece. And so whenever Gene
Wow.
would come to town, she would visit her niece and we would all hang out. And Gene, it's not that she didn't like my music. It was just, I think she felt like I was taking the original tunes and kind of messing with them. But but
Uh-huh.
we really appreciated each other.
Yeah.
Um, I was
Sweet.
happy to have met her as many times as I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually
I
went to
never got
visit
to
her
meet
in
Jean.
Berea after she had had her stroke and spent some time with her. And it was just sad, what a great musician, just, well, what strokes do to people. But
Yeah.
uh, so anyway, then we get to the present. So my book came out in 78 and it did very well. And then at a certain point, it stopped doing well. Everybody else was putting out books. Um, it wasn't such a novelty to have a little record in the book. I mean, everything that I had kind of pioneered was now
Uh-huh.
commonplace. And
Uh-huh.
also then I went into that period of time where I was kind of disappeared. But in 2010, the way my lawyers had structured the contract, the book reverted to me if it was out of print for a certain amount of
Oh,
years. So I
yeah.
owned the book. And so I reprinted it.
Good for you.
And I wasn't able, when it came out in 1978, I wasn't able to license the Joni Mitchell songs. Warner Brothers owned her tunes and they wouldn't let me have them because they wanted to do a 98-page book featuring the Joni Mitchell songs. The
Uh-huh.
publisher I went with, which was A&M Records, Alamo Publishing Company, this guy, he really got me. And he came up with the phrase Lapidus on dulcimer. And so it's like an encyclopedia. It's 252 pages,
Yeah,
40.
it is a tome. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And it was $9.95 when it first came out. It's $40 now.
Uh-huh.
But I was willing to license songs, pay licensing, a lot of
Yeah.
folk musicians. And I tell them it's so easy. It's not difficult. You just write a letter to the licensing. They tell you how much and you got the song. So don't be afraid to do that. Steve Eulberg just came out with this book, 50. I have to ask him. I don't know how he got those songs licensed, unless uh, Hal Leonard owns them.
Hal
And
Leonard was the catalyst for all of that because actually Steve talked to me a little bit about the process and said that at first he because they approached him about putting together an instructional book and he sent them a list of almost only traditional tunes and they were like, so we pay these sort of blanket licensing prices which are only it's only beneficial to us if you include this many songs that are actually copywritten. So they encouraged him to include more
I
songs
had a
that
hunch,
had,
because
yeah.
otherwise that would
So
cost.
that was really, but that's like maybe the first time that a dulcimer book has been able to do that many copywritten songs in one book. Because
Except
like
for
you
my
were,
book.
yeah, right. Because you have to do this sort of individual process, which
Right.
can be a
Yeah, I
lot.
mean, for 200 books, I mean, just to show you, I'm sure the price has gone up. I pay $125 for 200 books for every of the Joni Mitchell songs. And then multiply that. I think there's 12 licensed songs. That's a lot of money, you know.
Yeah,
But it's worth it because then you have in your book the songs you're playing and the
yeah,
techniques you're doing. So the
yeah.
other thing that happened is I started building again. And I think the first instrument I made was the Pelican dulcimer, which is this one here. Can you see it?
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And every instrument that I've done this heavy inlay in, that
Yeah.
started. The first one I did was the Ram dulcimer. God, I don't remember what year that is. But there's a story behind every one of them.
Uh-huh.
A ram actually came with those big horns to my workshop in Marin County.
Oh my goodness.
It had a tag on it, so we knew it was from a farm. But
Uh-huh.
it was so biblical. I mean, it was wild. And
A ram
there's
in
a
the
lot,
thicket.
yeah. There's a long story attached to it, which I don't want to go into. But the pelican, and so the pelican was made for sale, and then my partner said, "No, you're not selling that. That's your dulcimer." So I kept
Oh,
it. And then
good.
someone approached me, and the next one was the
The
jellyfish.
jellyfish.
Yeah, can you see those?
Oh, sweet.
And the jellyfish is the most perfect dulcimer I've ever made. There's no big mistakes. I make mistakes. I'm not, those guys in the Renaissance, I don't know how they did all that, but my inlay is not perfect. There's little gaps here and there, but they sound good and they look good. Anyway, so then what came next? It doesn't matter. Then Kevin Roth ordered a dulcimer, and we came up with this idea of this butterfly. We found this amazing South American butterfly, and it's really cool. You can see all these instruments on my website.
Yeah, you have wonderful pictures on your website.
And then my latest commission, which I wanted to show because I'm in the middle of building it, more than the middle. So then I got influenced by this guy, Grit Larson, who is this world famous inlay artist who lives in Canada. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Anyway, well, there's another fabulous inlay artist. There's a guitar maker. Oh God. There's this Kathy Winger. She lives not 5 miles, 10 miles from me. And her daughter does the most amazing inlay. And it's perfect. I mean,
Wow.
I just don't strive for that. I would waste too much time trying to be better. But her designs are incredible. Her work is immaculate. But Grit Larson does this thing where he lets the design float off the edge, and it goes under the nut. So anyway,
Wow.
this latest commission is called the ginkgo. It's based on the ginkgo leaf. Now the ginkgo leaf has these big slits down the center. It's kind of hard to see it, but this is the peghead. And you see the design goes off.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing.
And then I'm also doing. I've been commissioned to do on a Ron Ewing dulcimer. It's the Russian Firebird, and that's going to also flow from the peghead. One of the wings is going to be not there. You're just going to see. You're going to have to imagine, and the tail is going to flow onto the fretboard. So that's definitely Grit Larson's influence on me. And I wanted to show you these sound holes. I just finished them yesterday. I don't think they'll fall off.
Yeah.
The light's not so good, is it? Yeah.
It's not great, but I can still tell they're beautiful and sparkly and have different colors. They're shimmering in different colors.
Oh, wait. Change cameras. That'll do it. I'm going to change camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's a little better.
The light is better that way.
So the yellow is called yellow mother of pearl. It's the outside edge of the oyster shell is yellow.
Okay.
And the moon, the crescent moon, is mother of pearl. The first ginkgo leaf is the yellow mother of pearl. Yeah. Then the middle leaf is something called recon stone, which is something new to inlay. It's a semi-precious stone that's been mixed with a compound and cooked in a loaf and then sliced. And so all kinds of colors. And then the third one is abalone. I wish you could see the colors better. I don't know, but I don't think it's coming through.
Yeah, cameras never show them quite as well as they look in person. But
anyway, so I thought it would be interesting for people to see this instrument in process. I just actually cut the fret slots yesterday. So come on, camera, help me. You can't really see the slots, can you? There, that's better. Anyway.
Oh, at that angle you can, yeah.
And I put in a few frets. This is the fret wire. Whoops. You're not gonna. It has a little. It's T-shaped.
How long does it take you to put in to cut the slots and put in the frets?
Well, I have a jig.
I've always heard that's one of the longest parts. Okay.
No, it's a jig that slides on the table saw, and you have a template, a plastic template that you double stick tape to the fretboard, and then this thing just slides over your table saw, and there's an indexing pin. So you start at the beginning, the 0 fret or the nut, first fret, second fret. You just, and And you have to be careful because it's for a guitar, these templates. So you have to make sure you don't put in frets that aren't there. But I just
Right.
X's and, yes.
Every once in a while, I've seen a mountain dulcimer that seems to have the wrong diatonic frets. It's like a different scale.
I hired a guy to build copies of the second Joni Mitchell dulcimer I built, the Princess. It's the one,
Uh-huh.
and nobody can get the curves right, even though I send them the exact. The curves are what makes it musical. The curves are what makes
Yeah.
it so interesting. But the last two dulcimers he sent me were missing the seventh fret. Can you imagine? They were missing the
Oh
eighth.
no.
Anyway, so this is the top. Oh, I forget I'm on the. I don't know if
Yeah,
you will be
yeah.
able to hear this. This is such a. Can you hear the overtones or not really?
Oh no, that sound isn't coming through very well. I think
Okay,
because
yeah,
we
it's
didn't
Zoom.
turn on your original sound at the beginning, we're probably not going to be able to
Okay.
hear the
But
little
anyway,
sounds as well.
so this is the body. It's let me switch cameras.
Switch cameras again, yeah.
Okay. So this is East Indian rosewood.
That's
It's really
gorgeous wood.
gorgeous. And it's actually
Yeah.
oxidized a little bit. It's more purple. And I wanted people to see the inside. So
Uh-huh.
you put this strip around on the top and bottom, and
Mm-hmm.
that increases the gluing surface. Since the sides are just like 1/8 of an inch, this all
Right.
of a sudden you've got 1/4 of an inch gluing surface. So it makes the top and back. And then some braces to, this is 8 inches, 7 or 8 inches wide, 9 inches wide. It just strengthens the back. Some people put a strip
Right.
down the middle where the two sides join, because this is what's called a
Uh-huh.
matched back.
Uh-huh.
There's a seam down the middle.
Right.
But this is a shape I came up with. I have no memory of why or where. It's my kind of a signature shape.
It is a signature shape for sure. I
So
love seeing that shape.
that's kind of what I'm working on right now. And so I'm still building slowly.
Yeah.
I had the luxury in Big Sur of, I worked at Esalen, so I never had financial pressure on my instruments, like people who build a lot of instruments, like
Right.
Folkcraft, McSpadden. They're building a lot of dulcimers.
Right. Right.
I don't. I'm hoping. So I've always had a day job, and
Hmm.
and that has given me the freedom to just make my instruments as beautiful as I can imagine. So my goal is to push my imagination as far as I can. But it's
I
not
love
really
it.
intellectual. It really comes from a feeling, like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
these sound, like Grit Larson. He designs these very complex peghead and fretboard inlays, but he does the design ahead of time. It completely on paper. My sound
Mm.
holes are always designed last. I mean, it's just, I have to see what's going on with the peghead and the
Uh-huh.
theme. And,
Yeah.
these actually came from a design online, jewelry design. They were earrings, if you can imagine.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I
this is the
can't
part.
imagine
This
that.
is the part that
Uh-huh.
goes would go through your ear, and this is the part
Uh-huh.
that hangs down. It was metal, brass,
Yeah, sure.
but I just they captured my imagination.
Yeah.
And
I love it. One of the things that I am always curious about is if you have sort of consistent practices in your life that help you tap into the creative side. You talked about when you went to Big Sur, it was being in a place that was so beautiful that sort of drew that out of you. But now you live in LA in the city, right? So
well,
how do
yeah.
you keep finding your creative
How do I keep
spirit?
finding the forest?
Yeah.
Well, I live 3.5 miles from the ocean, so there's this place called the Jetty. It- it- my little town, Culver City, where I live, I'm actually not, but to show you how close I am to LA, the street I'm on, the next street over has blue street signs because it's LA and we're Culver City. So we're just
Uh-huh.
all, even my address is LA, but 3 miles from the ocean. And the jetty is where there's a marina, Marina Del Rey, and where the boats come out. Anyway, there's this big rock jetty, which makes the water calmer. So the boats can, go out peacefully into the ocean. But on these rocks are these huge pelican communities. So I walk out the jetty all the time,
Mm.
and there's a lot of birds. There's egrets and cormorants, and I mean, there's just seagulls. And I take my binoculars now, and I remember them. And so
Yeah.
I always go for the pelican sightings. The pelican is very important for me.
Yeah.
Just a little fun fact: pelican is the oldest bird.
I
It
did
goes
not
back
know
to the
that.
pterodactyl. In fact, the babies look exactly like little pterodactyl dinosaurs. The babies make sound, but pelicans are soundless. People don't know this. When you're at the beach and you hear, ah, it's the seagulls. Pelicans do not make a sound.
I did not know
I know,
this.
isn't that? So you see, whenever I do an inlay, I learn a lot about whatever I'm inlaying. Like I learned a lot about
Yeah.
jellyfish. Luckily, we have an aquarium within 30 miles that has this huge jellyfish exhibit. But So, that's what I do. And I was up in the woods camping this past weekend, and
Hmm.
I have a nice garden, and I have a vegetable garden, and digging in the
Hmm.
soil is helpful.
Hmm.
Um, where I live is kind of residential. It's not like the big tall buildings. And I mean, within 3 miles is Century City, and downtown is about 8 or 10 miles away. But it's not like New York where you go downtown frequently for cultural stuff. LA is a little bit different. Um, but that's a really good question. Uh, but I grow wild columbines, and I also grow fuchsias. And one of my dulcimers was a fuchsia. Somebody made a
Hmm.
dulcimer for me, and I said, that's fine, but I'm going to do the inlay. And so that's the dancing fuchsias. Um, so I think plants keep me in touch with nature.
Yeah.
And I live on a
Yeah.
street with a canopy of trees. It's really beautiful. It's not like a barren city street with no trees. It's just these beautiful Chinese elms. Um, so I don't know. We got birds.
Yeah.
Lately we have hawks. We have these three Cooper's hawks, and all the birds disappear when the hawks come, unfortunately. But they're
Yes.
gorgeous. They're stunning. I mean,
Mm.
so there's nature around, but I have
Yeah.
to I
You
have
go
to
looking for it.
go look for it. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is a good lesson that
Yeah.
we gotta sometimes look for the inspiration.
Hmm.
It, yeah. And
Yeah. I
to
don't
be
think any of
intentional about noticing it.
yeah. And sometimes it's right in front of you, because if you walk, like in my neighborhood, people have gardens, and you see some really interesting things. A lot of people are planting vegetables in their front yards, and um, I don't know. It's there if you look for it, but
Yeah.
it's not the same as being under a star-studded sky in the middle of a forest, you know, because you can't see the stars from my house. You see a couple of stars and maybe a planet.
Yeah.
There's too much
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's one thing we have going for us in Kansas, where I grew up, is we got lots of stars.
Yeah, I miss that. I used to go to summer camp when I was a kid, and you could see the Milky Way very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't seen it in
Yeah.
years.
Somebody said one time, like, what do you do for entertainment when you live in a really small town? And my family went stargazing. We like popcorn, and we took snacks, and we made hot chocolate, and we'd go out and we'd plan to spend like 2 or 3 hours just watching the night sky. So I've lots of really fond memories of like stargazing parties, and it was a
Yeah,
big thing. We did it. All our
absolutely.
friends got together. We went and watched stars. So.
Well, I'm sure you have these meteor showers too, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, it's about the time of year. Usually right around the 1st of August, there's one every year. So
Wow.
we lots of stargazing this time of year for sure.
Yeah. I
Wow.
wanted to mention a few other people
Sure,
um,
please.
uh, who have affected me. Well, first of all, I mentioned Richard Farina,
Yeah.
Joni, Odetta, the folk singer Odetta, black singer. Do you know her?
No, tell us more.
Oh my gosh, she's not alive anymore, but she was with the folk boom, the folk
Yeah.
revival. But she was the most powerful singer that I've ever heard in my life. And I got to
Mm,
hear her even when she was near death, and she was still
wow.
belting it out in a wheelchair. Uh, and the other thing is, I've been taking a jazz vocal workshop from a woman named Matilda Haywood, who is just an amazing black jazz singer. And there's so much talent in Los Angeles of all kinds.
Mm.
It's amazing. And the other people, Janita Baker, my style is mostly strumming, but I really admire the finger picking stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm doing more and more of that,
Yeah.
and I still can't really play across the strings so well, but I'll get there. But and dance, I've played music for dance troupes quite a bit, belly
Mm-hmm.
dance troupes, exercise classes, and that's a real thrill for me, playing for dancers.
There's a real fun energy between dancers and musicians that's a kind of magic that you can't
Mhm.
describe. You can only experience, I think.
And what's weird? A lot of musicians don't dance.
Ah.
I can't imagine that. I dance, but you
I
dance.
can't either. I love most like contra dances are kind of the form of dancing that's most readily available where I grew up. And my favorite was when there would be two bands. So I could be in the band and I could dance when the other band was playing and we would trade
Exactly.
off.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So we've covered a lot of
So
ground.
you also lead a couple of bands, yeah? You play
Oh
in
yeah,
several ensembles,
I
not
have
just
a
by
natural,
yourself, which is another important thing I think for
natural
us to just name the value of. A lot of times I see dulcimer players sort of feeling limited in only playing with other dulcimer players, and you don't do that
oh,
at all.
oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Well, do it if
We
that's
do.
all you've got to play with. Play music. But I play with
Right.
an amazing violinist, Yvette Devereaux, and a wonderful bass player, Oliver Steinberg. And when I can, I really like to play with a percussionist too. Uh,
Mm,
that would be my first choice, actually, to always play with a percussionist. But
yeah.
LA is funny. You don't find a lot of people who sit around just playing music for fun on their front porch. People are
Hmm.
more trying to be professional musicians and earn a living.
Yeah.
Um, but that's my band. It's called Joellen Lapidus and the Urban Gypsies. I recently got some flack. Apparently, there's a movement around criticizing people for using the word gypsy.
Yeah.
But uh, I mean, I'll take it into consideration. The name of my band is not that important to me. But what we mean by it is that we're not attached to any genre.
Mm.
We
Hmm.
travel around because we play world music, uh,
Uh-huh.
we play jazz, we play traditional dulcimer music, play a lot of original music that I've written. Um, and then I have this other band called Schmaltz. My older band was called Extreme Klezmer Makeover. But klezmer is kind of Jewish folk music, like in
Yeah.
Fiddler on the Roof. And it's Jewish wedding music, basically. But it
Hmm.
had a revival. in the last 25 years. And so that's really fun. So sometimes we play for weddings and bar mitzvahs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's with accordion. Sometimes I play accordion, sometimes I play clarinet and bass, violin, and clarinet. Yeah, I think, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a quartet. So, yeah.
I
I
love it.
I kind of graze from field to field. Sometimes I'm like right now I'm in the building mode more than
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
teaching. I'm going to be at the Quarantine 11,
Good.
and I really love the Quarantine festivals. And just did
Yeah.
KMW in Kentucky. That was really good.
Oh, good.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I like KMW. It was in person this year. And
Right. Yeah.
oh, you didn't come this year.
No, I've been doing Europe this year, so I've
Yeah,
missed all the in-person dulcimer gatherings in the States this summer
that's
to
not a
be
bad
explored.
trade-off.
Yeah, I'm feeling okay about it, but I do look longingly at some of the pictures from all of the different camps and things going on. I know
I
Western
look forward
Carolina
to the
universities.
pictures of
Uh,
Europe and Africa and
yeah, right.
Karen Alley.
We
It has to
we
be
all
some.
are all wistful for the places we aren't.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I see there's one question in the chat
Okay.
in on YouTube
Sure.
about the photo of you kissing the dulcimer on the cover of the first edition of your book and wanting to know if there's a story behind that photo.
Well, that's the third dulcimer I built for Joni. I built three. The first one was
Okay.
Columbine. The second one was the Princess Dulcimer. And the third one was the Jester. Um, there is a little bit of a story behind it. So I was living in West Hollywood at the time, and I had a friend named Julie Stroh. And we also made these zithers. They were kind of the shape of an auto harp, but they had no buttons and they had no keyboard like maybe a European zither. And they
Okay.
were used in hippie music. We would tune them to a mode and you could play them like a harp. And
Okay.
everybody would get stoned and play these, all this improv. Anyway, so I built this one. I think I have it in the hall actually, but I wonder if it would be easy to get it. No, but so it was Julie did the drawing and the painting, but it was a musical self-portrait. The nose is the Semitic nose. That's my Semitic nose. The earring is the influence of African music and rhythm. The Renaissance thing is more like the Renaissance shapes and the instrument.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I can't remember everything, but it was like, I call it a musical self-portrait. But anyway, so the zither was a painting. And then I translated that onto the peghead, but I made the lips
Okay.
three-dimensional. So one lip is ivory and one lip is ebony. And I just thought it would be a great picture. I
Yeah.
kissed it. And it's just like how you love the dulcimer. And so that became the cover of the book.
I
And
love it.
it's my hippie days. You see, I'm wearing this rainbow neck thing. You may not remember it, but that picture was taken in like 1976, probably, 76, 77. And it just captures that time period. It's also,
Yeah.
the picture is also on the back of the new edition. I really wanted
Oh,
to make
sweet.
it the front of the second edition, but people said, no, you should put your own picture. You should put you. And I succumbed to it. Did not succumb to it on my CD because I wanted the pelican,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but I'm on
The
the back.
pelican is important.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that's an amazing picture of a pelican. Oh
It is an
God.
amazing picture of a pelican. Yeah, the movement in
I
it is
found this
gorgeous.
guy who just photographed pelicans and he let me use that picture for free. I mean, God bless him.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, I've never seen a picture like that. You don't even see pelicans up that close because you can't get that close to them. but the
Mhm.
feathers and the way they use the feathers, like the airplane uses those baffles that go to navigate. It's just birds. They can fly.
They can fly. It is incredible. Oh, oh.
So I hope that
Well,
answers
Joe,
this question. It was playful,
yeah.
very
I'm so
playful.
glad he asked too, because that's a great story. I'm glad we got that story in. Well, I told you we would try to do this in 30 minutes, and it has been much longer than that because your stories are so incredible, and we barely touched on some of the pieces of your life. But I'm so thankful for your time today and for
You're
your
very welcome.
contributions to the dulcimer community through the music that you've created, the instructional materials you've provided, and the beautiful instruments that you've put into the world. Um, I know that the world is a better place because you're in it and you've shared your music. And so, thank you for inspiring us and for being one of the women pioneers who's
Mhm.
allowed a whole slew of women after you to follow in those footsteps and get out there and play instruments and build too. So, thank
Great.
you. All right.
Okay,
Um,
it's been fun. Thank
your
you.
Your website is lapidusmusic.com.
Yeah, yeah.
And so everybody go there. There's lots of beautiful pictures there, along with you
The
can
music,
buy
all the music is up there too.
the,
All the
the
klezmer
book,
music,
the
all the
CDs.
dulcimer music, everything.
Yeah. So
Videos.
definitely check that out. Thank you, Joellen.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Erin. See you
I
around.
gotta.
Are you looking for the end button?
Yeah.